Fantastic. Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today here live from our 13th BatteryMBA Roundtable, talking about the perspectives on the future of batteries. And we have two fantastic speakers with us. Thank you all so much for joining us live here on LinkedIn, YouTube, but of course, especially also this current BatteryMBA cohort with us, the 13th cohort, about to wrap up this another program, another cohort. So very excited to talk a bit about some of the developments in the battery market, which we have seen and of course a lot discussed also in the last 12 weeks or so. With this, if you can go to the first slide, just as a quick overview who we have with us today, and we're going to introduce our speakers just in a moment. But again, very excited to have us here. Of course, also my co-moderator, Shada. So we're really excited to have this conversation with all of you. But Cecile, Andy, already warm welcome. We're going to introduce you just in a moment for all of our audience. So if we go to the next slide, just as a quick one, who we are. Again, my name is Simon from Battery Associates. Our mission is to create a sustainable world through the power of people and battery innovation. And I'm super delighted to have you all here. We see you all as a really important part of that. And yeah, very excited to have you all on board. And yeah, Battery Pro is our consulting arm, Battery Labs, our innovation arm, and then Battery DU is our educational arm. And yeah, BatteryMBA is also part of that. And yeah, we're really here as a knowledge partner to support the battery industry. And again, all of you doing amazing things. So we're very excited to have you with us here in this program, but also anybody else listening on all of these other platforms. So if we go to the next slide, I'm going to quickly pass on to Shada.
Yeah, thank you very much, Simon. Shada here from BatteryMBA team. This is the slide we present BatteryMBA, our 12-week program. BatteryMBA has a proven track record in training professionals from top-tier organizations globally. Our participants comes from diverse profile. We have battery experts, engineers, tech managers, and executives in our cohorts, and we prioritize gender diversity in all our cohorts, maintaining at least 30% male-female ratio. And so our alumni represent 670 plus countries. Really, we have participants from all over the world, including industry leaders like Tesla, BMW, Mercedes, Volkswagen, and CATL. So with learners from 60 plus countries, the program offers a truly global perspective. Participants' feedback, you can see on the right, 95% of the participants would recommend BatteryMBA. 9/10 average satisfaction score, and 98% felt the program met or exceeded their expectation, that we are really proud of. And if we go to next slide, now we have a big announcement. We love to have you join us for our next BatteryMBA, which is May cohort, starts on the 5th of May. And if you're excited about accelerating your career in the battery industry, please don't miss this chance to apply for our cohort. Applications are open until April the 21st, and you can apply using this link highlighted in blue, battery.mba/enroll. And if you have any questions, please feel free to get into contact with us. And you can always reach us at info@battery.mba. So I'm going to now hand over to Simon, and he will walk you through our community meetups.
Thank you so much, Shada. And yeah, I think a big part of it, and especially also I'm personally excited about this conference season has started. I already have been to a few last week, and there's more this week, and of course, many more to come this year. And yeah, that's a fantastic also way to connect with other participants and other alumni from the program. Here you can see some of them, from China and the UK. Germany, all around the world, really. Yeah, we have many meetups in the US as well, a few in Belgium, and many others. I'm not showing all of them here. And yeah, super, super excited to meet with you and the alumni. So again, the alumni here on the call, please make sure to look out for your email so you get invited to these meetups. Hope to see many of you in some of the meetups we have planned. And again, it's something we also believe it's very helpful to kind of connect. And yeah, the next big one for us also, where we have a lot of them, I think last year, 50 or so, we've met of you there, would be at the battery show in Stuttgart. But there's also a few other ones, so look out for them. You can just see here a few more events. India also have been last year, and other regions. So again, very excited to have more meetups. And also, if any of you are interested to step up more and also help us organizing more meetups, please get in touch. We're really excited to support you on that as well. With this, we can go quickly to the next slide. That's another event, again, online, which we're all inviting you to. Of course, all our BatteryMBA participants and alumni get special invitations there as well, but also that's open for everyone to attend. So everyone here on the call, even if you're not able to join the BatteryMBA program, you're really welcome to join us on the next Battery Day, taking place on the 25th of September. It's free for all, really supported by amazing sponsors. We already have a few really amazing sponsors lined up and some really cool speakers and panels. So please make sure to join that. Again, it's free for all. So we really have this as a great platform to connect with many of you online. Brilliant. I think with this, we can go over and really introduce today's speakers. And I want to pass it over to Shada to introduce our first speaker for today.
Perfect. So we have incredible panelists today with us, and I start with Dr. Cécile Perra. Dr. Cécile Perra holds a PhD in combustion modeling from INSA, Rouen, Normandy. She has been serving as director at Oracle Limited since May 2020, where she leads the company's strategic initiatives and drives innovation across its operations. With a strong technical foundation and industry insight, she plays a key role in shaping the company's vision and growth. In addition to her leadership role, Dr. Perra is a prominent technical communicator in the automotive industry, publishing high-impact content that reaches over 25 million views annually across her channels and client platforms. Her career spans pivotal roles in business development, R&D, and performance testing. At Convergent Science, she serves as a key account manager, supporting major clients with advanced simulation technologies. Prior to that, at Infinium, she led global R&D programs and managed performance testing in engine technology for key customers worldwide. Welcome, Cécile. Nice to have you here.
Thank you. Hello, everyone.
Fantastic. Then I will go next to Andy, and maybe already a quick word here for all the people joining us live. You can already put questions to our speakers right away. We're going to hopefully go through as many questions as possible later on. So just a quick invitation to already have, make sure you put your questions in. From experience, usually there's a lot of questions in the end, which is very tough to get through. So yeah, already as an invitation. But yeah, it's another person you might want to ask some more questions to, is Andy, Dr. Andy Palmer, who's a renowned entrepreneur and business leader with a career spanning across automotive, lithium-ion batteries, renewable energy, and business transformation. He's the founder and CEO of Palmer Energy Technology Limited and Palmer Automotive Limited. He holds key leadership positions in several high-impact companies, including Brill Power, Innobat, Hilo EV Limited, and Ionetic, where he contributes as executive chairman and strategic advisor. Dr. Palmer has also served in various executive roles, including CEO of Switch Mobility, President and Group CEO of Aston Martin Laguna Limited, and Chief Operating Officer of Nissan Motor Corporation. His leadership at Nissan was pivotal in the development of the Nissan Leaf electric vehicle. Dr. Andy Palmer is a distinguished academic with a bachelor from Coventry, Masters of Warwick, and PhD from Cranfield and MBA from LBS. So wonderful to have you here, Andy.
Good afternoon, everybody. Nice to be here.
Fantastic. Shada, do you want to ask our first question?
Yeah, perfect. My first question will be for Cécile. And so, Cécile, I want to just ask you a question about advancement in battery technology. And what recent advancement in battery technology actually excite you most, and why, of course?
It depends if you are talking just from a pure technology point of view or from a business point of view. But I would say going through cell to to body, cell to chassis is for me the most exciting things, because it starts to merge battery technology and chassis technology and makes quite a big challenge, of course, for the OEM, but really brings new opportunity, new way to manufacture, new way to make margin for the OEM, new way for thinking the vehicle, etc. So for me, that's the most exciting one, promising one.
Yeah, thank you very much. That's really for reducing the cost and increasing the energy density as well. It's quite important. And I want to know actually just maybe a follow-up question on which racing battery development would be desirable to transfer to mass production by 2030 for you?
On this one, it really depends what brings the most value for people. The things for racing are obviously optimized for what people need in racing, which is not necessarily what people need or want for daily life. But if I have to take one thing here, I would say probably fast charging. Really, when I say fast charging, I mean ultra fast charging, like in 3-5 minutes, like we start to see, is something that is pushed by motorsport and also is desirable by daily usage. So probably this one, even if I imagine a lot of people think about immersion cooling, for example, but I do not necessarily think, of course, I know there are a lot of things pushing for immersion cooling. Of course, it can bring some good things, but I prefer to talk about the ultra fast charging enabled by what other technology, maybe immersion, maybe by something else, because it brings value for the customer.
Yeah, definitely fast charging would get rid of one of the major concern, which is range anxiety in electric vehicles.
Yes and no, in the sense that ultra fast charging, if you can charge in 5 minutes, is not necessarily something that you, the public, need daily. Daily, people will continue to charge at home on slow charging, home charging. It's enough for daily use. It's just that people, if they really need to do a long journey, they can get ultra fast charging sometimes.
Okay, perfect. Thank you very much for those insights. I think for the next question, we can continue with Andy, and I hand over to Simon for next discussion.
Thanks so much, Shada. Yeah, Andy, I mean, you have quite a distinguished career already, quite a few interesting stations there. Maybe to kick it off, I'd be quite curious to see, well, like here, but in the BatteryMBA, right, we'd love to talk about lessons learned, best practices. Would love to hear a bit from you, from your time at Aston Martin and Nissan, maybe some of your takeaways, some lessons learned, especially on the perspectives and the future of future mobility.
I mean, we could go in any direction with that, but I'll limit it to around the electronic software and battery areas, which is to say, really, you have to believe in the Moore's curve. It's real and it's alive. When I started the development of the Nissan Leaf in 2008, I think it was, there wasn't a battery manufacturer available. We had to invent one. We did a joint venture with NEC. I signed that joint venture. That created a company called AESC, which today, of course, is Envision. And as we started the development and as we went into production with the Nissan Leaf in 2010, the cost of the battery was around $1,000 per kilowatt hour. $1,000. Today you can buy for less than 100. So you've seen the increase in energy density. The Nissan Leaf at the launch was 24 kilowatt hours. Now most electric cars are 80 to 100. So you see the Moore's curve at work, whether you look into software, whether you look into electronic hardware, whether you look into batteries, you have to believe in that curve, that basically as you reach mass, costs come down, performance goes up. And the reason I pointed out is that a lot of the cynicism that I hear around the move to electric cars, the the public debate around the cost of electric cars, the worry about European and American companies committing to electric cars, they all miss the point that the Chinese have understood, which is you invest hard, you go hard, you commit, and basically you get to those economies of scale, and that's where your industry is going to win. And so, you know, that's really my learning from my career is the importance of thinking long term. Of course, you have to act in the short term, but you also have to believe in the long term, and you have to be aware of fundamentals like the Morse curve.
Brilliant. And maybe kind of touching on that, right? So you mentioned again that you didn't have a cell maker like a partner at the time, so we had to create one together and sign these agreements. There's a lot of discussion at the moment, right? We also had some here in the BatteryMBA about the need for vertical integration, and also understanding how deep you have to integrate. And we have seen many different examples now from different OEMs taking different approaches there, right? How deep they maybe want to integrate, and how, if they want to make cells themselves, they want to partner, and what level. Maybe to kind of get your sense on this, where you kind of think at the moment, where do you stand, maybe also from an automotive side, but also I know you're also involved in a range of other battery-related companies. How do you stand on the topic of vertical integration? How much is needed to really kind of future-proof your resilience, but also kind of be as cost-effective as you can be?
I think the business model that you follow, whether you do it through complete integration into the company or you do it through partnership, doesn't matter. But what you have to recognize is the interdependencies. So when I was at Nissan, I always recall a huge argument between Nissan and Renault. You know, they were alliance partners at the time. As Nissan, in my responsibility, I likened the battery to that of an engine. And my argument was very much along the lines of, you wouldn't give your engine development away. You keep it in-house, it's fundamental. And that was my great belief, that Nissan needed a stake in its battery capability, AESC, because it was so fundamental to the view ahead. Now, my colleagues in Renault were much more of the view that the battery, and in particular the cell, was a commodity. You let the markets fight, it brings down the cost of the commodity, and you buy the commodity and you integrate. Neither were right or wrong, but what is important is that interdependency. So you've got to have a partnership with your battery maker, your cell maker, whether you own it or whether you buy from it. And that battery maker has got to have an interdependency with its anode and cathode maker, its separator maker, its manufacturer of electrolyte. So down the chain, that interdependency is very important. And as something as important as a battery going forward, you have to view it, I think, in the same way that you look at other important commodities. We've all seen what happens when you can't buy chips anymore. We had the chip shortage shortly after the COVID crisis. So it's a fundamental part of your supply chain. You need to protect it. You need to make sure that you've got it under control. Whether you own it or not, I think, is probably an irrelevance, as long as you've worked out those interdependencies. And of course, that's easier if it's part of your group than if it's part of your supply chain. But in either case, you need to have protected for it.
No, I think that's really important points. And I think case by case, right, at the end of the day, is quite important there. It's wonderful to see there's already quite a few questions coming in on LinkedIn and also here on our Zoom chat. So just for anybody listening right now. So this first part is public. So again, everyone on LinkedIn, please put your questions in now so we can still address them. We have about 20 more minutes, which is here live, and you can ask your questions on LinkedIn. And then, of course, we're also going to go through all of your questions here on the Zoom, all the current BatteryMBA cohort. So please also make sure to keep putting your questions in so we can also address them then in the second part. But for now, I have one more question also for you, Andy, and then I will pass it on to Shada to ask the first question from Ugur for you, Cecile, and then also Gang. Your question, I will ask it to Andy, and then of course the other ones you keep posting. Andy, my kind of last question for now would be kind of looking at that Yes, I think here the question would be talking a bit about policy and policy changes, right? I think it's a big topic, especially from a company perspective. What kind of policy changes would most accelerate the transition to electrified transport? Is it more like charging infrastructure, innovation, battery passports, any other thing you think could be important?
I mean, look, I'm an advocate of the free market. Let the market decide. The market is normally correct because ultimately it's the millions of consumers that make the decision in a particular way. But I'm also a great believer that at certain times in history, the market can be distorted, and you need a kind of Keynesian approach, which means that you need a partnership between at least the manufacturers and government, and maybe the manufacturers, government, and academia that brings it all together. So you need a policy. How I translate that, you could look to China with its one-party mentality, but of course that kind of management is a little uncomfortable for most of us. So how do you deal with that in a democracy? And if I look to the UK, and where perhaps I believe the UK made a mistake, is it doesn't have an industrial strategy, and therefore it's tended to waver depending on the color of the politics of the time. I'm a great believer that basically if you want to navigate through moments of big change, and particularly moments of policy consistency, you need a consistent industrial strategy. The industrial strategy sits essentially with a civil service that basically hold it irrespective of whether the color of the politics is red or blue. So I think that's probably my biggest takeout. Of course, if you want to boil it down to a really simple point of view, what car companies in particular look for is consistency. If you're consistent with your policy, if you're consistent with your direction, as for example Norway has been, then basically you're more likely to get investment into that and commitment into that than if your policy is changing every other week, as has been the case in the UK of late. So I guess the answer to your question is policy needs to be consistent. I would suggest that the best way of doing that is to embed it in some form of industrial strategy, and to sit that industrial strategy with a body that will maintain it almost irrespective of the politics of the time.
Great, thanks so much. I think these are some important points. Shada, you want to go next?
Yeah, perfect. And the next question from our LinkedIn Live participants, so audience, it's for Cecil, Ur's question here. And Ur asks, if in your review, Cecil, what are the critical success factors for companies aiming to establish competitive gigafactories in Europe, considering challenges like supply chain constraints, energy costs, and regulatory frameworks? Which companies do you see as the best positioned to success in this landscape?
Ooh, interesting. Indeed, recently in Europe, we have not succeeded in making a good gigafactory. And probably I would have said a few months ago that I thought Northvolt would make it. I thought Northvolt was relatively well positioned in the sense that they have been working for quite a long time, but I've been wrong, obviously. I think the main problem I see in gigafactory in Europe, and for me, one of the causes that we have trouble, is that we have been quite arrogant, I think, and also we have minimizing the difficulty of making battery, because we are coming from a world where we have produced and developed internal combustion engine, for many, many years, and all of these rely on metal, so all of these are processes we know very well. But because batteries for consumer electronics, for smartphones, for computers, and so on, it was seen in the past as relatively dirty job. So we have put this and say to other country, especially to China, okay, look after that for us because it's just annoying for us to do this. And obviously, they have gained experience. And what we are missing in Europe is experience. So we need to know that not necessarily, it's not that we don't need to understand what we are doing. Of course, we need to understand what we are doing. But sometimes experience teach you that you thought this would be a good solution because this is this. But when you try this, obviously, it's wrong because it goes wrong for something you have never thought about. So because we have not really taken the learning curves in the sense of earning our knowledge, we have tried to leapfrog thinking we can do this. Today, we pay a big price because we are lacking just experience. So knowledge, I say that all the time, knowledge, we need more knowledge, we need more learning, we need more experience. And the last thing is mindset. Because again, we in Europe like process, and very often I hear people saying, oh, no, we cannot do this because we have never done like that. It's not possible. But then you can see that some other people, sometimes it's Chinese people, sometimes Korean people, sometimes Tesla, whoever, they succeed to do something we thought was not possible because we stay with an old mindset and sometimes old learning curves and so on. So more learning, more knowledge, more experience in the sense of learning from failure and mindset.
Yeah, thank you very much. Interesting because China really ahead of us and they know how to use the machinery, and we don't know that knowledge with many years of experience they acquired this knowledge. And I think with innovation in battery field, maybe we can one day get ahead of Chinese competition. But at the moment,
innovation is one thing, but innovation without the learning curves, I think it's difficult because you imagine something which is innovative, but even sometimes people even don't know what really exists. Sometimes I review projects where people say, we are going to do this. And you're just like, okay, but that's already 3 years ago that whoever is already doing this. People just sometimes they just don't know what exists because they rely on just what have been published. So they just forget where we are today. They know where we were 3 years ago, but they have no idea where we are today. And even worse, they don't know where their competitors are already working for the next 1 year, 2 years, 3 years. They have absolutely no idea.
Okay, yeah. That's a fair point. And so I think I hand over to Simon now.
Thanks so much.
Another a question for Andy now.
Thanks so much. Maybe also a quick one. I mean, Andy, is there anything you want to add from your experience and your insight on making gigafactories in Europe a success based on your early experience with the ambition?
Tough. It's really tough. Making batteries is tough. And I think I was involved in obviously the very early development of AESC's batteries, and we made an awful lot of mistakes. But we started 15 years ago. What I see, it's hard to say this because I am, but there was a certain arrogance around bringing battery technology into, let's say, into the European timeframe or the European space, where it was believed that it was just another manufacturing, it was just another thing. And we lost a lot of time as Europe, and we haven't learned the lessons that companies in Asia, and by Asia I mean Japan, Korea, and China, those lessons learned, and particularly China, because of their industrial philosophy, they've ramped up to massive volumes quite quickly, and that's allowed them the economies of scale. And it was said that China is ahead. I think that China is 10 years ahead, and it's really difficult to catch that back. And I think you've got to adapt a little bit your mindset to one of contrition, that you've got to accept that you're behind, and you've got to try and learn from people that you previously thought were behind you, they're now in front of you. So there is some merit, I think, in getting into collaborations with Chinese, Korean, Japanese battery makers, particularly Chinese battery makers, I think, in order to relearn the basics. It's a fact that European industry has tried to move with its own, and very few of our battery makers have made it. Northvolt being the biggest obvious casualties, but you know there have been others, and we can't afford not to make batteries on this continent, because if you don't make batteries, you don't make cars. So we've got to learn, and perhaps one of the ways of learning is through collaboration with the Chinese management, and the other is to listen and learn from what the Chinese did, which is to leapfrog. So I would suggest the easiest area to leapfrog in is in battery control, where we're still relatively good at software and hardware and the management of the batteries, not necessarily to try and keep following in the chemistry. My great belief is that batteries can be divided into three big categories, 3 C's, chemistry, cooling, and control. We've kind of lost the battle with NMC and lithium phosphate. So you've got to leapfrog to what is the next. My argument, I think, would probably be it'd be solid state on one view, and it would be sodium ion on the other. But you also need to try and get ahead in the area of cooling. And I think we can still win in the area of control. So that's where I would put my emphasis of win in control and try and catch up in chemistry.
Brilliant. Thanks so much, Andy. And you're kind of perfectly putting, the transition to a next question, which from Gang Hu, who's asking exactly about the topic of solid state. You just touched on it next to sodium ion. And he's asking, can you comment on the prospect of solid state batteries? It could be the penetration rate in the next 5-10 years. Could it be a predominantly technology route among polymer oxide, sulfur electrolytes, and different application sectors?
What I love about the battery industry is it's still relatively nascent. So it's a bit like the car industry at the turn of the last century. It's still lots and lots of inventions. We're still high up that Moore's curve. So there's lots of innovation going on. And it would be extraordinarily arrogant of me to predict what the future is, because there are so many potential directions. But I'm going to have a go anyway. So I think there are two trends that are very important. Trend number one is really about energy density. It's about how you pack enough energy into the battery that you can reach the performance levels that you might need in a racing car, all the way down to the distance you might want to travel in a bus, for example. And there you have this curve of sort of NMC, whether it's 622 to 811, low silicon, high silicon, the move into semi-solid state, and eventually solid state. And I think there is no given solid state. There are many definitions of it, but it's evolving through many iterations. But you've got that general curve towards high energy density. But I don't think that we can assume that everything is going that route. There is a need for low-cost chemistries defined today by LFP, and defined by that need for not necessarily high energy density, but high cycle life. And I think there's some really interesting stuff around how you keep the price low, how you keep the cycle life high. Sodium ion is one of the solutions. I'm sure that there are others, but I think you need that route as well. So probably two routes, two trends. I don't see them coming together anytime soon, but I see the need for both. And so at the extremes, something like solid state for air transportation, the drone type situations, and for energy storage, probably more along the low cost, lower energy density type of solutions, both of which, by the way, need very good electronic control, both of which need very good cooling. So there is some consistency in the middle around areas where we can still win.
Appreciate it. And I think there's one kind of follow-up question I just see here now, just for you, and then also maybe we can go to you, Cecile, and ask a similar question about technologies you're seeing. There was a question for you about your recent leadership roles at Podpoint, Everati, and Innobat, how they envision the integration of advanced battery technologies and charging infrastructure and accelerating the adoption of electric vehicles globally.
So I think I put the move to electric vehicle as a kind of consequence of something bigger. And something bigger is the way that we consume electricity, the way that we consume energy in an environment where we see rapid climate change. My great belief is that our energy needs to be decentralized and democratized. We need to put the power of electricity with the consumer, not with the big companies, and the ability to allow the consumer to decide how they charge and discharge energy is really important. So in the future, I believe that every house will have a battery. That battery will allow you, for example, to charge the battery at a cheap rate overnight and discharge back to the grid at an expensive rate during the day. That makes your electricity cheaper. You can gather the electricity by the grid or by solar, and that you can use the combined saving to run your heat pump or run your electric car, hence the electric car connection. Ultimately, today, I think there are two impediments to the fast rollout of electric cars. One is the cost of the car itself, and that needs to come to parity. And that parity is helped if you can reduce the size of your battery, but no one's going to agree to reducing the size of the battery if it increases range anxiety. So you've got to have a prolific rollout of charging infrastructure, whether it's fast chargers or it's home chargers or it's work chargers. But that would allow car companies to create city cars with smaller batteries, get you to more close to a similar cost as an internal combustion engine. But the area where you don't look for parity is in the cost of running the car. And today, the cost of running the car is still too high, even if it's lower with an electric car. What you need to get it to is some part of your travel needs to be for free. And I believe that the integration, the decentralization, the democratization of electricity, the ability to store electricity at your house, charge your car, basically for free. So ultimately, some part of your travel is for free. Now, then what's not to like about electric cars? They cost you the same as an internal combustion, but you run them for free. My belief is that that would satisfy 80% of the consumers out there, rather than the 20% that only look at electric cars as a way of saving the planet. So you move it from a climate countermeasure to an economic countermeasure, and you're going to attract a much bigger cadre of future customers.
Fantastic. No, thank you for sharing that many aspects in there covered. Shada, you want to bring up the next question?
Yeah, I just want to ask Cecile, which key aspects do you think should be taken into consideration for the future of batteries? Cecile, what?
I don't understand what you mean. What
Is it, example, is it like...
I think we lost her there. I think she wants to say, is it more about, battery materials like silicon anodes, the fast, charging rates, new technologies for stability against, dendrites and safety, manufacturing techniques?
But my question is much more if we are talking about battery cells or if we are talking about battery pack, which because
Let's do both.
Yeah. So I know most of people focus on battery cells, and most of the topics we talk are about NCM, LFP, and supply chain and material here. I am much more a person with a system view of the full battery pack. For me, all this material makes sense only if they are well engineered, so they work all together. What I mean is that you can take something specific or something which can be less good maybe on paper, but can be more optimized. And it's exactly the case, for example, for LFP. Because if you, for a long time, like on LinkedIn 3 years ago, everyone was saying, oh no, LFP is not good because NCM get much more energy density, so NCM is going to win, and so on. But now that people realize that if you combine LFP with cell-to-pack, with a simpler cooling system and a simpler cooling strategy, then it can be very, very optimized also for margin point of view. So for me, this question of material and all you put your money on or bet it's going to be better than other needs to be seen as something globally. So people talk about vertical integration, but much more on how you will put that nicely engineering all together. And the magic of this and the beauty of engineering here is that there is, of course, not one unique solution. So like Andy said previously, there will be different routes, some going for solid state, some going for LFP, some going for maybe more adapted for aircraft or for marine or for so on. And it is where all the OEM, manufacturer, and so on can bring their value because they have understanding of all the jigsaw pieces they can put together that will work and make sense only when they combine together. But individually, for me, there is no answer if you take the material or the technology or the component just on their own.
Thank you for sharing that. And then as a final thing we have now is also a poll on LinkedIn. Shada, maybe you want to share that just quickly, and that's kind of final thought. We have many more questions, so really appreciate it. I think, other questions which came in now from Mark and others. So we cannot go through all of this, unfortunately. But hopefully maybe some of our speakers can maybe also, if you're willing to go, I know you're quite active on LinkedIn as well, Cecile and Andy, maybe if you have a moment, you feel free to also have a look at some of the questions for you there, and maybe we can address some of them later on as well. But just for now, maybe Priya can bring up the poll, and then Shada can walk us through quickly, and we get the thoughts from Cecile and Andy.
Yeah, we're going to bring up the poll now, and we can take your thoughts on that. This poll actually we ran to understand what the industry believes should be the top priority for automotive companies focusing on electric vehicles over the next 5 years. So the question was, can you see the question on screen?
I think it's still loading, but you can already read it up.
Yeah, I can read it up because in the interest of time, the question was, what strategic shift should automotive companies most urgently prioritize for EVs in the next 5 years? So the overwhelming majority chose battery and charging advancement. As you can see, 52% advancement in battery and charging infrastructure should be the top priority. This aligns actually with the growing concerns about the range anxiety and charging accessibility. And the 34% was the vertical integration for cost. So cost control and supply chain resilience was also important for the participants, especially with battery materials, and chip shortages maybe in recent years was an example of that. And 14% e-mobility as a service. There's a growing interest in e-mobility, but perhaps it's seen as a longer term play. And the last one was infotainment and software. And no one chose this option. Maybe it wasn't seen as a urgent, although important, comparing to other more fundamental aspects. So any comments on this poll, Andy?
Yeah, I have a comment here.
Yeah, Cecile.
I think it is important to remember on this poll that the answer is sampling by the fact that you are touching battery people, because obviously you are battery associates, so people answering this question are battery people. I think if you ask this question to a broader audience, I'm pretty sure infotainment and software will get a much larger audience. I go to shows and exhibition at Embedded World or people for NVIDIA, software, chips maker, and so on. So I think this question is, for me, some kind of misleading, because we are just sampling the answer by what we want to hear, because battery people answering battery question.
I agree with Cecile. Software-defined vehicles is one of the big trends in the industry. The way in which we develop cars is changed by the way that we develop software. A lot of the issues around software, Volkswagen comes to my mind immediately with the problems that they had on the ID3 and the ID4, are because they tried to develop software like they developed hardware. And it doesn't work. It's a different way of developing. And so I think the management and the development of software in a software-defined vehicle is really quite an important part of the future. And given that the future is basically around electric vehicles, that the two are interconnected. I don't deny that there's a lot of strategic importance in battery and charging, that the vertical integration of costs, Cecile mentioned at the very start, I think, around the cell to pack, cell to chassis moves, which is all part of the integration of the technology into the car. That's also very important. Maybe e-mobility as a service is a trend that has gone away for a while, but I don't doubt that it may come back as we think about the way that we move in future. But maybe it's more of a macro trend. But I would say that 0% for software is probably not correct if you look at it as a car maker, but might be important in this forum.
Well, I think it's a very fair thought and very fair point. I agree with you. It's always, you can only get the response from your audience. Yeah, I think it makes sense. We have a lot of battery people on here. These are really valid points. For now, this actually means we're going to conclude the public part. So I just want to thank everyone for listening live right now here on LinkedIn. You've been very active. Again, there's more questions, Mark and others. So you have Andy and Cecile, in case you have time later, to have a quick look there. I'm sure they would appreciate your thoughts on some of these additional topics. Also want to share, we have now spoken quite a bit about automotive. I know there's a lot of battery BESS stationary enthusiasts out there, and there's been a big representation also in this cohort. And I already know in the next cohort, we have quite a bit focus on BESS already. So yeah, just to kind of share that, as we just have been touching on one technology for now. But I can already see here there's many other questions from this cohort. So to make sure we now go over to that. And again, just for now, really appreciate everyone for listening in on LinkedIn and YouTube. If you want to join, you're welcome to do so. Again, you can apply by the 21st of April for the BatteryMBA cohort 14, which starts on the 5th of May. So hopefully see many of you there. But for now, thank you all for joining. We're going to now close the live stream and see you all here in the cohort. Okay, I think that everyone can relax for a moment. We're going to go non-live. Everyone, feel free to also turn on the video again. I'm going to make sure not everyone can also unmute themselves, as today you were not able to do so, but we're just setting this up here so then everyone can speak up. And I really appreciate all of your questions. So I think we can start off. Maybe I just go for the first one, then Shayla can go next. So I think Nitin, you have the first question.
Hello.
We can hear you.
Hey, I wanted to understand, like, this question was specific to Andy, like, how much reserves does automotive companies keep with respect to the claims, battery warranty claims that can come? So if Simon or someone can answer on that, that would be great.
I can have a go. Generally speaking, when we started out the development of Leaf, our assumption was that the warranty provision for a car was approximately equal to that of a internal combustion engine, with the prospect that it should be lower because there are less moving parts. As a reality, we saw two areas: early life battery failures, both in production and early life into service, and we saw higher warranty around software definitions and software modifications. So at the beginning, the warranty of the vehicles was higher than that of an internal combustion engine. That said, as time has gone by, particularly with some degree of maturation of the battery, we're generally seeing better, or I should say lower failure rates of batteries during manufacturing, and we're seeing longer cycle life of the battery, less failures of the battery, but we're still seeing quite high incidence of software related warranty. So I don't see it yet at parity with the internal combustion engine. But again, I come back to, even though it's taken much longer than I would ever assumed, I do believe in the long term that warranty provisions on electric vehicles should be below that of internal combustion engines.
I have something to add here. I was talking to the CEO of a big company, not doing cars, but other type of vehicle. And he explained me that when he's dealing his contract with the cell maker, they are, of course, talking about volume and price and cost and so on, but they have now option for committing for warranty, which means that the cell maker he is working with says that the cells, any failure on the cells themselves, are under warranty for, he told me, 12 years for the type of vehicle he was doing. So, for example, in this case of this company, of course, it doesn't mean that they cannot, there can be some problem, but at least if it's due to cell manufacturing or any kind of issue, the cell maker are so confident in their technology that they give a warranty of 12 years on the cell themselves directly to the OEM, if I can say that.
Yeah, I reinforce that point. When I started out, then batteries were warranted for about 1,500 cycles. Today, you could typically get easily 3,000 to 4,000 cycles. And more recently, you've been able to buy batteries that are capable of 6,000 or 7,000 cycles. I'm told that in future we can expect 12,000 cycles. So you can see the cell makers, exactly as you said, basically are getting much more confident in their long-term durability and reliability, which is just simply showing you the importance of technological maturation.
Excellent. Thank you both for your insights on warranty. And next question, Danielle. Would you like to ask your question, Danielle?
Yes, of course. Hello, everyone. It's just a generic question about the chemistries that we touched base on a few minutes ago with NMC, LFP, and so on. We talked about some kind of trend number one, which was say this was described by Andy with solid state battery, maybe for let's say air mobility, and there was a trend number two, which was more on the high cycle life and cost, and trying to merge both would probably require a lot of efforts. But we touched base on iron phosphate, we touched base on sodium. What about lithium sulfur, which also gaining some traction, especially with some of the big car makers like Stellantis and others. So I would like to get your opinion and your views on this.
For me, I'm a great believer that engineers innovate, and that you have to allow the technologies to compete in order to find the survival of the fittest. As I said, it would be extraordinarily arrogant of me to tell you that this is what the future looks like, because I would never have, for example, have bet upon sodium ion 10 years ago. Even 5 years ago, I would have told you that I believe that LFP is just a transition to NMC, and that NMC will eventually go on to win. And in that sense, I've changed my views. I would have probably have bet upon metal air as one of the technologies for the future, but at the moment it's not showing any great sign of winning. So I honestly believe that you have to allow this Darwinism, particularly in the early stages of the life of batteries, and that the fittest will survive. And it could be any one of those technologies, or even a technology we haven't thought of right now. So I would let the engineers and the scientists innovate. I would let ultimately the market decide which one I prefer. But I believe at least there are two trends that don't merge. One is the need for high energy density, and the one for low cost energy storage.
Perfect. Thank you, Andy, for your thoughts. Cecile, you want to add something on this lithium sulfur chemistry?
I do agree with Andy. There is, for me, just one thing we need to be careful is that, as Andy said previously, we need to be consistent. And the danger with all this possibility is that we panic and try to put a little bit of our money here, and then we dilute our vision, our global strategy. So we cannot know, of course, what is going to win, as Andy said. And we still need to be careful that maybe have a look on what happened. But the first thing I would recommend is to do your homework in terms of doing your bibliography, knowing what exists, follow what, and there's so much going on everywhere that it's very difficult. But for me, the first difficulty for most of companies in Western countries, in Europe, is that they even don't really know. They're just in panic mode, trying to say, oh, maybe it's here, and they dilute. They have no consistency and get their strategy because they are in panic mode and diluting themselves a little bit. I think if, like Andy, you really see the things as something on convenience in terms of application, in terms of what you need, instead of what sort of technology, but much more of what you need, and then select the best things for what you need, and not the contrary, select a technology and try to apply it somewhere. It helps to get a better consistency and do your homework to know what exists already.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Cecile, for that. We move on to the next question now. Paulo, do you want to ask your question about non-Chinese industry, or I can read it for you? Okay, Paulo's question, I think we discussed that. Is there a realistic change for non-Chinese battery industry to succeed, given the massive overcapacity already built up in China? So, any comments on that?
So for me, I'm relatively pessimistic for Europe because, as Andy said previously, we have already missed the train. I think we have to leapfrog also. What Andy said previously, we have to leapfrog if we want to do something. And in Europe, we have some companies doing this, and it's not that much more trendy. But if I take, for example, Tiamat in sodium battery, they are building a gigafactory for sodium battery in close to my parents' region in the north of France. That can be an option in the future, for example. If we talk about more classic gigafactory, then it's already the past, because we are talking about producing technologies that already exist, which are already produced massively in China for a much lower price. So in some sense, I am relatively pessimistic on this part, rather than leapfrogging on maybe something else.
Okay, thank you, Cecil, for sharing your thoughts. Andy, you want to add something on this?
Fighting the Chinese on existing chemistries is going to be hard work. As you say, they have massive installed capacity, means that they can fight with that, and obviously that gives them the low cost base. So it's a kind of race to the bottom, in the same way that solar panels has been a race to the bottom. So difficult to justify a big investment with a low return. To my mind, probably better to fight in the area of software and electronics control, where perhaps we're still relatively early in the life of controlling a battery and extracting as much life out of it as you can through that control medium. Better to go there, I think, where we're not so far behind, and then work back up the value chain as you start to get customers. The one advantage that Europe has, and it's an important advantage, is the customers. The volume of our industry, the volume of likely consumption of electric vehicles and ESS is probably higher in Europe than it is elsewhere in the world. So ultimately, if your customer becomes discerning, and if that discerningness, if that's a word, includes the desire to buy European technology, then that which we're not very good at doing, it has to be said, but if we were better at it, or if we value, for example, security, which could become an issue in the future. In other words, we worry about Chinese software in our batteries, then there may be an opportunity to win also. And if you win in the electronics, if you win in the area of cooling and packing, you might eventually allow you to catch back in the area of chemistry, or you might leap to the next generations of chemistry, maybe solid. But harder there. So I would start at the other end, electronics, control, BMS.
I just also want to add to the original question that it depends what you call European gigafactory. Are we talking about European-owned gigafactory, or are we talking about gigafactories that are based in Europe? Because in this case, we also can include Chinese people getting their own plant in Europe and developing gigafactory in Europe. So it also depends how you see that. And if we consider the geopolitical question, can we be independent? It still ends up to the fact that even if we have a gigafactory in Europe, we still have to get material coming from abroad anyway. So it depends how you define the question exactly.
Yeah, thank you, Cecil, for that. There is a follow-up question actually that's related to, again, Paulo's question. Holly, you want to ask this question quickly?
Yeah, I'm actually not sure it's needed anymore. I feel like my main question was about what you think might be needed to be different in order to be successful in a non-Chinese industry. But you guys both kind of touched on that. So
okay, thank you. We skipped that as well. There is a question from
I could add something to
yeah,
that,
please,
which is one of the areas that we can win in is energy storage, and particularly with a more open-minded view of trading of energy. China, the consumer in China can't trade their energy back to the grid. In Europe, and I can say at least in the UK, there are 4 different mechanisms that you can use to trade. Not all of them are open to the consumer. But if you allow this trading to happen, in other words, you're arbitrating your electricity, selling some of your solar back to the grid, selling some of your expensive electricity back to the grid, if you're putting that in the hands of the consumer, then Europe will go fast in this area. And in going fast in this area, you create a market. And when you create a market, there's more likely to have economies of scale for people to come and manufacture here. So I think one of the winning strategies is creating a vibrant market for batteries, not just in cars, but also in other applications. And through that, you're more likely to get inward investment from the likes of the Chinese, but you're also more likely to see successful startups.
Thank you very much. And be
That
continued.
was very much, sorry, and this very much resonates. I think also there's a lot of participation here on the best side. So I think we definitely see a lot of interest in that regards. Maybe I can quickly go in just another one here from Alexis. Would you like to ask any question?
Yes, sure. So there's a question is that in North America, we are seeing another approach that's doing joint venture between the car OEM and the Chinese, Korean, Japanese. Do you see that as a good approach, or is it also risky because somehow you are opening also the door to some more competitors?
I think in trying to catch back time, probably the fastest way of catching back time is through collaboration. And it's what the Chinese did 15 years ago was basically invite investment from Western manufacturers, and they caught up and overtook. So I think collaboration is a valid alternative to tariff. I think tariff is a blunt instrument. I think tariff basically might protect the patient, but ultimately the patient isn't exposed to competition and therefore becomes fat and lazy, and that's dangerous. So I think collaboration, yes, there are dangers of collaboration, but it's probably less dangerous than simply putting a wall up and ignoring that the problem exists. I also think that particularly in the United States, you obviously have a very vibrant venture capital startup culture, and a lot of innovation can come from some of that. And I think therefore the idea of a leapfrog is also relevant. So don't think about today's technologies, but think about what the advent of future technologies might be. What I am sure is that you can't put your head in the sand and ignore the fact that the world is changing. You can't drill, baby, drill forever, right? At some point or other, you've got to accept that there is a climate crisis. It is a scientific fact. And at some moment, you've got to do something about it. And for that, the winners are those people that have been preparing the technology and are able to move quickly. Right now, that's the Chinese. In future, I hope it's not only the Chinese.
Again, here, something to add. I was talking to, again, the CEO of a big company, and he's developing a partnership with some Chinese cell maker. And we talk about what are his options. And he told me, honestly, I have no option, because if I do not partnership with Chinese people, I cannot survive in this world for the short term. So he say, in terms of being able, first they have a lot of investment, they have cash flow, and they can really help to, scale up, getting experience and so on. And he understands the danger of the collaboration, of course. And it's not that he wants or doesn't want, but he says that for now, he thinks that it is his best option to survive on the short term.
Thanks a lot. Okay, partnerships, and I think we see a lot of this happening. I mean, even these cohorts, right? I think partnerships is a key there. Just a quick one from Tareen. I'm just mindful also of time, and we've been asking about more. That's again on the ESS side. There's like some news for high energy dense systems here, like on a container level, and then also on the cell side. Again, I think there's some interesting developments in this regards. Yeah, I'm not sure if there's something we can add now here I think are you looking at more higher voltage systems? I'm not sure if Andy, that's something which comes up in any of your work, or Cecilia, you have come across.
Yeah. So there's a clear trend from 800 volts towards 1500 volts. That's pretty clear. And I think if you were to talk closely with some of the guys in China, they'd say that there was a need to develop something in the order of 2300 type of voltage system. So I think there's a general trend towards high voltage. Of course, that brings other problems, not least regulatory problems. On the car side, you're seeing increase in voltage. The industry kind of moved to 800 volts, but now you saw just, I think 2 weeks ago, BYD launched their fast charge system with 1000 volts. So speed of charging is probably something that is very relevant to the car industry. In the ESS industry, it's probably a lot to do with, strangely, the size of the package. People want more energy dense, so you're seeing a lot of movements in terms of watt hours in the cells. A lot of development going on there, and a lot of development in terms of the voltages being used and the way that you control. So when I talk about perhaps Europe having the ability to exploit some advantage in software, firmware, hardware, it is also in that area of sizing the voltage and what might be the future beyond 1500 volts.
Yeah, I completely agree.
Great. I hope, Shireen, this was helpful. Is there anything else for you to add it on? Joshua, would you like to go next? If you're not with us, Joshua, I can quickly ask a question for you, and Shada, in case you want to do it next, so I can also do it.
Yes, thank you, Simon. My question was, what technologies, processes, or technical due diligence have you seen, if any, directly impact or lower BESS project insurance or reinsurance premiums?
I can try. I think I can't answer your question directly about insurance premium, but I can answer your question around behavior of buyers of BESS. More emphasis on both the proliferation of a thermal incident. So a lot more, even in Europe, you hear the requirements for it's the UL testing, I think it's called, but basically generating a heat source inside the battery to see what happens when you get an ignition. So much more expectations around the electronics to detect and switch off, and then ultimately within the BESS system, a lot more emphasis around fire control. So I guess at some moment that's probably being translated into insurance requirements. There are very few strict guidelines around the installation of BESS, but there's a regulation or a guidance, I think it's 558 or 588, around things around, for example, distance of firewalls from various facilities. At the moment, it's not baked into legislation, but I could imagine that more and more guidance will go around how you install and where you install BESS units.
Yeah, I'm based in California, and of course, we've had some issues in the recent past. So I'm anticipating, and our firms are trying to determine what those lower premiums look like, if there's any ways that we can get creative that'll drive growth.
I think ultimately, I keep coming back to electronics on this particular call, but how your electronics can prevent proliferation of a cell problem, switch the cell problem, switch the problem cell off before it starts to give you any kind of ignition, is probably much better than fire containment. Fire containment means you've already lost the unit. Obviously, you're looking at a containment within the container and then firewalls to stop the proliferation beyond the container. But probably the answer to an insurance question is to stop the propagation in the first instance.
I'm not completely sure about this. I would put an information additionally to this because in storage battery, they are now in China pushing to get absolutely zero thermal propagation, meaning that even if you ignite one cell, it cannot propagate to any other neighbor cell, which means that you cannot control that electronically or software because on purpose you trigger a cell. So for now, it's not in automotive, it's only for storage battery. But this new standard, new regulation is said that will be adapted by all railway, all marine, all air industry. And obviously, if it cascades to more transportation, I'm afraid that at some point it will end up to be also the reference for automotive. So maybe at some point, not necessarily short term, but let's say mid-term, we will have to get absolutely zero propagation, even if not relying on software control or whatever, but just purely thermically, if I can say, or mechanically. I don't know how to call that.
Okay, great. So minimizing cell propagation and then
not minimizing,
zeroing
avoiding
cell.
absolutely zero. It's not
Okay.
Zero.
Absolute zero cell propagation. And then Andy, going back to what you referenced, really looking at the electronics sensors, how you can just squash that fire immediately from any container. And then, I think we also anticipate FAT, SAT playing a big part in that, third-party inspection. So I appreciate the insight. Thank you very much. And it's been a wonderful experience, and I'll highly recommend this to my colleagues.
It's kind of you. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Joshua. And then there's one more question for Mohammed. I think he had to drop off, unfortunately. I appreciate it's a longer session today because we want to give this to public and closed door discussion. I will just read it out for him. And Mohammed is asking, is there any potential for developing economies, especially areas with high liquidity due to oil industry like the Middle East and high interest into battery local manufacturing, which they have the money to fund to establish a local battery industry, especially for cell levels? Do you have any thoughts on these questions?
Look, there is obviously a lot going on in the Middle East with, for example, Saudi national car. There are some particular peculiar challenges for cars that exist in very high ambient temperatures, which is maybe an area where the Middle East can specialize. The other thing I come back to is sodium ion. Sodium ion, obviously salt, pure salt is a natural side effect of desalination. So if you try to think about two industries coming together, the Middle East is doing a lot of water desalination. You could combine that with for example, an area of expertise around sodium ion, for example. So I guess that's what in the advice that I've given to various Middle Eastern governments, that's the sort of thing that I've talked about, is rather than trying again to compete head to head with the Chinese, think about where you have peculiar problems in the Middle East and try to adapt technologies that then give you an advantage. Heat and dust are two of the key ingredients of the Middle East. So basically think about how you solve those problems and give yourself a competitive advantage.
I also can add that it's already happening in the sense that if you look at who is sponsoring what, who is putting money where, you see a lot of investment from Saudi Arabian people, not only SABIC or Saudi Arabia, but if you look like PFI, so this is a funding investment. They are sponsoring a lot of events. They are also everywhere where I go, in conferences, in exhibitions. You see these Saudi Arabian people already putting their chest piece everywhere. So it's a question about what they can do, but also a question of investment, where they put their money already. And because they have cash flows, they are obviously preparing the future. So they have already played in advance, of course.
Fantastic, yeah. And I think we have definitely seen quite a bit of interest now, so in the BatteryMBA cohort in that region, these topics. So yeah, I think that's good to hear. I'm looking at time, so we have two things. We have a feedback form as usual for everyone. Really appreciate your feedback also for today's sessions. Almost the final one. There's one final one, the graduation. But other than that, you have done all your feedback forms, so really appreciate that as usual. Please fill them in. It really helps us to improve these sessions. Also, of course, we will take our group photo. So anybody want to be on the group photo, please make sure to turn on one more time your camera. If you don't want to be on it, please turn it off as usual. It's going to give a moment for everyone. Also, it's nice for Andy and Cecile to see there's some more people here who can take off on the camera. Wave the camera if you like. 3, 2, 1. Awesome. Really appreciate that. Yeah, and then I think, very exciting week. We have, I think, some more case study presentations as well, which is always a lot of hard work by your fellow participants. So again, I would really encourage you to join any of the office hours if you can. Again, a lot of work is put into this, and I think it's really a highlight also for me to see the great work and what's put together by the teams. And there, just a massive thanks also for Andy and Cecile to join us today and share your insights and your perspectives. Yeah, I think you're quite prominent also on LinkedIn, so maybe some people find you there. And again, for today, I just want to thank your time and for being with us, and also thank all of you to join us for today's panel. And very excited to see you in the office hours. And of course, not to forget the graduation on Saturday. We're going to celebrate all of you for completing the program, and we're going to reflect on the last 12 weeks. With this, thank you all for joining. We see each other soon.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Andy.
Nice to meet you,
Really great.
Cecile.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, Andy
Bye.
and Cecile.
Thanks, Aman.
Bye-bye.
Bye bye.